Is that, what is it, the Camino? Yeah.
Yes.
Geraldine, that's cool. All right. And our third one's a yay for Geraldine. All right. And the last one here is going to have their tattoo idea read in just a second. It's broccoli by
Yes.
Tess. All right. I'd like to hold you to that, Tess. Come and get your mugs after the show. All right. Fun. Thanks everybody for participating. We hope you like your mugs, and you should know we had a great time reading all the entries backstage, and we encourage you all to get those tattoos. And while you're at it, get them at our friend's place at Soul Rage Tattoo in Madisonville. Check them out. Cool.
All right. Our final storyteller tonight is an actor, singer, songwriter, playwright, and altogether creative spirit who was born and raised right here in Cincinnati. Please give it up for Ryan Vaughn.
I've always been the anxious person, and since middle school I've also struggled with depression, but in May of 2018, things were looking up. I was at the end of a tumultuous year as an elementary school educator, but I had just landed a position at the leading and largest pediatric psychiatric facility in the entire United States. I was performing theater quite frequently. I had some of the greatest friends that I've ever had in my life, and I was married to a woman who balanced me out perfectly. What I had, she didn't. And what I didn't have, she was able to give me. One of the first things that my wife and I talked about actually on our first date was that we both always had longed to be parents. And so in May of 2018, when she told me that she was pregnant, we were on cloud 9. We quickly booked the first prenatal appointment, at which they told us that because my wife and I both struggled with diabetes, and because I'm adopted and don't know my biological father's medical history, there could be some bumpy roads ahead. But we didn't cling on to that. We clung on to hope and love and pushed forward. About 3 weeks later, my wife started cramping to the point that she had to miss a couple days of work, so we quickly booked the next prenatal appointment, during which they told us that the chance of our baby surviving was 5%. It was time to bring in our friends and loved ones and tell them about our hope. But we didn't want to tell people to be thinking of and hoping for our peanut. That wasn't us. So we sat down that night and we chose an androgynous name for our baby if they were born. We came down to 2 choices. Avery, from our favorite show to watch together, Grey's Anatomy, and Amari, which in the Hebrew language means miracle. We ended up telling our friends and loved ones to be hoping and praying for our miracle. That night, we also went to Walmart with a pie-in-the-sky hope that if Amari had something here waiting for them, they would pull through. We picked out what we hoped would become our baby's first stuffed animal, a stuffed giraffe. We showered it with love. I slept next to it every single night. But unfortunately, love would not be enough to save Amari. My wife would miscarry 4 days later. Losing Amari, my wife isolated. She wanted to get away from everything and everyone who reminded her of Amari. I longed for connection. It was that rift that would eventually lead to us divorcing years later. But when I was looking for the connection, 2 of the people that I very quickly found that connection back to was my best friend since childhood, Anna, and her mother, Mary Beth. Anna and I were only a couple years apart from each other in age, and our moms had been friends for quite a few years before either of us were born. So it just made sense for Anna and I to always be growing up together, playing with each other, and for me to actually call Mary Beth my second mom, and her to call me her first son because Anna was her only child. We spent nearly every holiday together. We had monthly game nights, and I could never get enough of it because Mary Beth was the type of person that had such joy and light that she would bring into a room, you couldn't be in a room with her and not be affected by her. September 2019, I got a call on my phone from Anna, which I immediately knew something was wrong because Anna never called me. She told me that Mary Beth had been killed in a car accident the night prior. That night, I ran to be with my parents, and the three of us together ran to be with Anna, knowing in the back of our minds that we would know exactly what to say to make the hurt go away, but finding very quickly that we were wrong. We spent the majority of that night in a deafening silence, not knowing what to say through the hurt. At that point, my desire to connect went away too. I isolated. I stopped performing theater. I stopped reaching out to people. The amount of people that I was interacting with came down to one that you could count on one hand. In March of 2020, my mother became very ill, very suddenly. And at that point, the anxiety and the depression that I had been struggling with for so long came to a boiling point, and for the first time, I was prescribed an antidepressant. I walked the walk with my father from March to August of 2020 as my mother seemed to get worse and worse and worse until in August of 2020 she passed away. That was my breaking point. I found myself at a crossroads that I never thought that I would be at. See, I was working at the largest and leading pediatric psychiatric facility in the entire United States, but I found myself experiencing what so many of my patients were. I was ready to take my own life. Over the next 2.5 years, I would have 2 active attempts at taking my own life and more than 10 additional hospitalizations for suicidal ideation. There seemed to be no light at the end of the tunnel. People that know me then tell me now that I was a zombie. It seemed that I had no emotion until I did, and when I finally did, it was so intense that I would become suicidal again. But there was one more person that I found connection and love to. I mentioned that I'm adopted. I've known my mother's biological family for my entire life. And I've known my biological mother since I was 16 years old, when she was able to find sobriety from the addictions that had afflicted her. It took me some time, but in my 20s, I was able to foster a really loving relationship with her, for which I became extremely grateful when I was fighting these demons, because one night, when the suicidal ideation creeped in, I had a thought. I wonder if she would know what to tell me. So I texted her. I laid it all on the table. I told her everything that I was experiencing, and she knew exactly what to say to me to calm my mind, because she had fought many of the same demons that I was. I would text her a couple more times, and each time she knew exactly what to say to me. And so I know what you're thinking, right? What the hell else can this guy go through? But unfortunately, I'm not done yet. In October of 2022, my biological mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, like a freight train no one saw coming. She would die of that same stage 4 cancer a month later. At this point, I had lost 4 people that were extremely dear to me. And what I didn't see then, but I can clearly see now, was that the 5th person I lost was myself. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had no vision of the man that I once wanted to be. It was my biological mother's death that would lead to the second active attempt at taking my own life and my final hospitalization. Because now I'll say this. I'm not going to leave you at the end of this final story with this weight on you. Because during that final hospitalization, I had a psychiatrist who finally cracked the code. See, what was happening was every time that I would become suicidal, they would prescribe more medications, the very side effect of which was suicidal ideation. The more medication they gave, the more suicidal I became. It was a vicious cycle. And finally, someone had cracked the code and prescribed for me to immediately go off of every single psychiatric medication cold turkey. I did, and through 3 days of pure hell, I went through withdrawal. But after that, for the first time in 2.5 years, I breathed. I could see that light at the end of the tunnel. I was able to see an example of who I wanted to pull myself out of this muck to become, and I was able to find my passion again. Before all of this happened, I had been performing in theater for close to 20 years, and I came back into theater in a way I never thought I would. I became a playwright. My monologues, plays, and scenes have been performed here in Cincinnati, in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, in Evanston, Illinois, on the campus of Northwestern University, and virtually worldwide. I've also become a singer-songwriter performing locally, and for the first time since 2019 now, I'm starting to build myself back into the Cincinnati theater scene. To say that those years were hell on earth would be an understatement. And I know what you're thinking. I'm gonna read your mind one more time, all right? What the hell does all this have to do with tattoos? Let me show you. My first tattoo I ever got. A father and child giraffe side by side, just as it should be. My second tattoo. This means hurt, grief, love, and longing. This means healing. This means that I fought the hardest fight that I've ever fought, and I came out stronger on the other side. This means that my story wasn't over, and it's still not. And these three, they were just for fun. And isn't that just life, right? Love, longing, grief, hurt, healing, strength, power, and when we remember to allow ourselves to have it, just a little bit of fun. Coming out of that, I am so proud of the story that I get to share now, of the strength that I found. And I could not be happier that I still have Amari's love, my healing, my reminder to have a little bit of fun, and the giraffe that I actually still sleep with every night to this very day next to me to remind me of who I am, the strength I have, and that a parent's love never ends.